Yeah.
Hello again, everybody. Welcome to our last session in the Future Encounters series today. I'm welcoming three more filmmakers, and all that they have in common, apart from being men, is that they are not British, although one of them is resident in the British Isles. So we're going to talk a little bit, we're going to talk mainly about their own individual films, but we're also going to maybe talk a bit about different cinema traditions and whether in our neighbouring European countries cinema is in a slightly different state from how it's been in Britain, at least in terms of their experiences of making films and the influences on them. So I'd like to welcome, and please excuse me when I mispronounce all of your names, gentlemen, and perhaps you can repronounce them after me, but Bigdeli Behrouz, who is director of To All My Friends, Daniel Seidender, who is...
Daniel Pfeiffer.
I'm sorry, I knew I was going to do that.
It's difficult because
that is
we
so
both name
embarrassing.
Daniel. So
Daniel, I'm really sorry. Daniel Pfeiffer, who along with Daniel Seidender co-directed Hurdy-Gurdy, and he's going to tell us about that collaboration process so that it's locked in my brain, which Daniel I'm talking with, and Borka Sigtherson, who is the director of Come to Harm. What I'd first like to ask is each of you just to talk a bit about, one of our themes today is how people came to be directors. You know, did they, at the age of 5, watch a movie on the television and think, that's what I want to do, and then it was a very simple process and with never a bend in any other direction? Or so what really started you in the road to wanting to make films, and then maybe to just talk a little bit about how you came to make this particular film. Would you like to start?
Should I start? Well, I mean, I just grew up watching a lot of films when I was a kid, and I didn't ever think of directors as such. It was just watching films and being amazed by them. And I think to begin with, I just wanted to be an actor because I thought that was what films were. So it took a long time before I kind of realized that there was someone behind the whole thing pulling the strings, and suddenly I became really fascinated by that part of it. And I just basically started doing films with my friends just for fun, with my dad's camera, and just cutting them on camera because I didn't know anything about editing. And it wasn't like I was the director on the films. We were just doing them for fun. But I just found out that I sort of knew a lot of stuff. Like I had a lot of ideas, or like I had a specific way I wanted to do it, and I kind of overruled everyone else. So I just kind of grew fond of it, and I started doing it more and more. And after college, I went to a place called the European Film College, which is in Denmark. I don't know if anyone knows that, but it's kind of just a place to cut your teeth in a weird way, where you just kind of try everything. And I did that, and I just got to do a lot of films, and I just did everything I could do. I did a lot of crap, and got it out of my system. And I just while I was there, I just really knew that I wanted to do it, and kind of had the fight with my dad and everything with career paths he didn't approve of, probably. He's happy about it now. And after that, I came out and I had some films. And the way in Denmark is just you have to apply to film school, so you have to have a film, and you just like it's free, but you just kind of have to get through. Like they pick out 6 every 2 years for the Danish film school, and I applied with the film that I thought was the most professional looking one, and I didn't get in. So I kind of was very depressed by that. And there's another film school in Denmark called Super 16, which is an alternative film school created by the students, so there's no teacher. It's students running the school, and it's basically created a little over 10 years ago by people who tried to get into film school and couldn't, and they got pissed off and they just started their own school. So it's like, and just raise the funds, and it just like they apply the new students, and then the new students take over the school, and there's like no rules. So so I thought I'd apply for that, and I had made another film at the European Film College, which was just this kind of weird thing that I did with my friends, and it was kind of back to the old style I was doing, just a couple of friends doing stuff, and someone told me I should apply with that one, and I felt really weird because it was really amateurish, and I was in it, and it was just embarrassing, but I did, and I ended up getting in. So, and everyone was really older than me, and I had to show that film the first day, and it was horrible. It was the worst experience of my life. Yeah, and then it's a 3.5-year course, and this film is the graduation film of that course.
And was this a film that is it a story or a film that you had in mind for some time? Is it particularly a story that came from you, or did it kind of come up during that experience of being in school? Was it, where did it come from?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was kind of always my plan to do a punk film, just because I grew up in a punk environment and I had a lot of punk friends. And so I wanted to do that as a graduation film, but I couldn't figure out what story it should be. And when it came to writing it, I just kind of had a block because I couldn't figure out what the story was, and it just became dumber and dumber. And so I just, one day I was just really upset, and I went to a cafe and I drank a cup of coffee and I just started writing just from the heart. And what I ended up writing was a story about me and my best friend, and how like a conversation with him kind of, which ended up being the opening monologue of the film. And I just found out that was the story, and that was the honest story, and it wasn't really about punks at all. It was just about a friendship. And so it's like I have a big problem watching my films. Usually, like I sit and cringe. So I thought I might as well do something really, really personal, so it could be as worse as possible. Like watching your film is like torture. So that's how it came about.
We're going to subject you to a bit of torture in a minute watching a clip. But
Thank you.
Daniel, what was your route into filmmaking and the route that led to Behrouz Bigdeli?
I started with theater in my youth. I was playing in the school theater and a lot of, and in art we started making films. It was my first contact, but then I studied at first theater science, and I was directing a company in Germany and also make films projected on stage. So I came back, but it was an experimental film, so it's footage material which I scratched and colored, and I thought where's what Clockwork Orange and a ballet. And and then I decided to make a turn, and I studied film and media design in Mainz, and I finished 2004. And I did some commercials and for enterprises, some films and documentary for television and for other formats. And then I decided to make my master somehow together with Daniel. He was also finished with his studies and has his own company. We said, okay, let's do master, so we are more free and we can do what we like somehow. And so we did, and we get some money from the German Academic Exchange Fund to travel to Estonia. So we make a script. We didn't really know what to do there. So I just say we make a documentary. There's a conflict. The Russian youth and the Estonian youth are fighting against each other. So some kind of conflict there. There was also an atomic reactor, which was used for the submarines, for the Russian submarines. It's also a theme, and then we want to test it with tilt and shift optic. So we traveled like 7 days. It was like a road movie with head cams, with this tilt and shift thing, and with normal camera. So we visit a lot of places, so Tallinn, but also inside the country, and we make all this footage. When we came back, it was easy to make this documentary, like normal style, with interviews and stuff. It was an easy way. We make a really experimental film about this power station, atomic power station. And the last one was hurdy-gurdy, so there wasn't a name at first. There were also the shootings with this tilt and shift. And we were fascinated by, we think, what kind of story shall we tell to the audience, or for us, to make a sense out of it. And we came, okay, it's miniature, so maybe we should shoot in this miniature world in Hamburg. It's really big. They have built whole Europe in miniature, and it's controlled with a computer, and it's really funny. So we drove there and for 1 day, and we came back, and it was, so we decided which shots compare to each other, where we can build something. It was real work in progress. And then we found this music. It's kind of, what is it? Yeah, it's hurdy-gurdy, or a kind of repeating music. Or the box that normally is like the music box. You open and you have the sound. So I was thinking all the time, a music box, that's not a good title for the film. And after 2 days, I was searching through the internet, and I found this word hurdy-gurdy and this Bob Dylan song. And so we decided for this title. And and it was all of a sudden a big success. So we sent it through the Golden Sparrow. It's Goldener Spatz in Germany. It's a festival with a children jury, and they voted us the Golden Sparrow for the minis, and that was really great, and really enjoyed it, because the children, as they are open-minded and asking questions all the time. I mean, normally if you sit in in the cinema, and the guy said, "Do you have some questions for the director?" Maybe 1 or 2 questions. Okay, we meet at the bar. No, they were really insisting for the answers, and it was quite fun. And so it was made possible that we make also film print out of it. It's really amazing. I saw it the first time here on the festival, and what else?
So it's interesting that both of you guys, kind of quite a big factor seems to have been having that space provided by an educational institution to actually have some freedom to make something a bit different. Was that your experience, Volker, as you?
No, I started working as a photographer when I was 20. I got into photography very young. I was maybe 13 when I got serious about it, and spent the rest of my teenage years either taking pictures or developing them in a darkroom. And I started working, as I said, when I was 20, and started working a lot with bands, and pretty quickly I started doing commercial work as well, which afforded me a little bit of money. And I developed a relationship with one particular band, which I did all their artwork for, all their record covers, and they were signed to Sony in the UK in 2003. And off the back of that, my videos got to a production company here called Oil Factory, which signed me up for 2004. And that's when I started working in the UK. So before that, I actually did a feature film, which me and a couple of friends, when we recently finished college, we wanted to make a stop-motion short film, and somehow that became a very kind of socially realistic feature-length film. And the guy who actually stars in my film, Come to Harm, he directed it with his wife. They've since become husband and wife. And we wrote it together, produced it together. They directed it, and I shot it. And after that, I actually started working quite a lot as a cinematographer and doing music videos as well. And then I got signed here. Started working here, doing music videos. Quickly got into commercials, and I used to just kind of fly back and forth between Iceland and London. I used to pitch for various jobs. I flew out, and in 2008, I wrote and directed a short film, which is just a 1 minute long film, and then I made the second film. Kind of started working on Come to Harm almost immediately after that, and it took 3 years to kind of get that from start to finish. So that's kind of been my journey.
And was that not the straightforward film school route. Was that a story? Was Come to Harm a story that you'd had in mind for a long time? Did you think that's the short I need to make? Or?
No, it was. I was working on something else. It was a different project that I was working on, and I was involved in a project that had a few directors working on a similar story, and that kind of fell apart. And from that, I was working on my own script, kind of out of that project. And at that time, obviously everything crashed. There was this massive economic crash, which some of you might have noticed, and it hit Iceland specifically hard. Iceland, and are there any Irish in here? But at the same time, there was an event here. There was a man, was a lawyer, a barrister. I don't know the difference really between a barrister and a lawyer, but
is there a barrister in the house?
A legally trained person working in the city who, Mark Saunders was his name. He came home one day, got drunk, armed himself with a shotgun and started firing from his apartment. This was a big, many of you probably remember this, and he was gunned down by snipers a few hours later. And that kind of the economic crash in Iceland and this massive boom and bust happened there. And this event with Mark Saunders, that kind of got me off with this particular script and this I guess curiosity about what, because there was never really kind of explained what exactly happened with this guy. How come a guy kind of in this situation, man living in a £2 million Kensington flat, comes home one day and a few hours later he's been gunned down by snipers. It was one of those kind of stranger than fiction kind of things. And so I started working on the idea kind of what puts a person in that place. How do you get there? How do you become that man? And that's how Come to Harm came about.
Well, it was a film when I saw it, when Mark showed it to me in the selection, I was completely struck both by its incredible control as a genre piece. I think it's a fantastically constructed thriller, and yet it has this incredible emotional punch, which I think is a rare and extraordinary combination. Let's just have a look at a little clip, just to give people here a sense of what we're talking about. This is the opening sequence from Come to Harm. Could we hit the lights, please?
kemst ekki inn í tölvuna mína. Hvað ertu að gera? Hvað meinar þú? Þú veist, þú átt ekki að vera hérna. Komdu. Hvað meinar þú á ég ekki að vera hérna? Hvað meinar þú? Komdu, Stefán. Nei.
Tilbúin. Viktor, tilbúin.
Aftur. 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 Viltu að fara? Mamma er komin. Nei, ég ætla að bíða tilbaka. Bye.
Hæ, þetta Anna. Skildu eftir skilaboð.
Fantastic. Thanks, please. Which is not, of course, on the original film. You're all in some ways, as I say, as we quaintly say in Britain, European filmmakers. Well, Europe, but originally Tehran. Like it or not, I think that people always tend to put cinema into national categories, and I've sort of noticed in years of travelling to festivals, there's this sort of perception that we of the Brits have still of European cinema, that it's somehow slow and bourgeois and all to do with affairs of the heart and mainly sits in festivals and that nobody really wants to go and see it. And similarly, that there's a sort of notion about British cinema that it's either gritty realism or kind of stupid comedy or period dramas, more of them than you care to mention. And you know, I certainly like to think that there's a lot more to British cinema than that, as indeed there is to whatever European cinema might be. It may be a daft question, but do you yourselves, are you conscious of working in any cinema tradition? Do you think of yourselves as European filmmakers or other filmmakers? Does any of that make sense to you, or do you just think, no, your influences are elsewhere and you might be doing your stuff anywhere? Don't know. Whoever wants to chip in and start.
Well, I don't consider myself, I don't look at myself as an Icelandic filmmaker, I don't think. But that might also have to do with the fact that I've been working in an international environment for a long time. But certainly, you know, you're very influenced by your immediate surroundings. But I think I'm more influenced by the society which I live in than the cinematic tradition that I come out of. But Iceland has such a young cinema tradition. You know, there's a, you know, most of our films have been rather shoddy, and you know, it's really just kind of now in the past maybe 10 years that Icelandic filmmakers have realized that you actually have to put some effort into the scripts as well as, you know, actually just going out and shooting them. And that's, I mean, you can really see that on how films have progressed in the past 20 years or so. It's that, you know, it's almost like people just went out and the script was an afterthought almost. It's like, I've got this idea about these two guys and they're going to get really drunk and they go and it's going to be incredibly funny because they'll go and rob someone. And you know, there's this kind of, it feels a little bit kind of thrown in there. But there's a much more and bigger awareness, I think, now about craftsmanship in Icelandic cinema, and that just has to do with a new generation that's coming in. And maybe because people have access to a greater variety of films, and there's a more, I'm not entirely sure, but Iceland is very young in that sense, culturally. It was like 100 years ago we were living in mud huts, and that's actually not a lie, you know, that's not an exaggeration, it's a fact. You know. My mum, who's born in 49, you know, her grandparents were literally raised in mud huts. So,
so in terms of cinematic language, do you kind of feel like it could be from anywhere? You know what I mean? You would take, if there are influences, I take exactly what you mean, that the environment is more important to you than other films maybe, but I guess nevertheless you learn from other filmmakers, but you don't have any sense of working within one tradition or another. It's whatever.
I mean, I grew up on American and European cinema. And I was lucky because I got a lot of, I did have access to more than just a kind of a tight variety of films, but I mean, I think it's a very Western cinema. That's the diet that we're raised on, I think.
How about you, Benja? Do you have a sense, do you see yourself in a kind of tradition? Do you want to be in a kind of tradition, or where does your sense of cinema come from?
No, I try to stay out of the tradition stuff and kind of just do stuff that I want to see. That's the most important thing. And I grew up American cinema as well, and I didn't at all care about Danish cinema till the Dogma wave came, and for a very short while I cared about Danish cinema, and I stopped caring about it again. Yeah, exactly. And because it just came, then people misunderstood the Dogma wave in a way, I think, in Denmark, because it became this thing that everything is dogma, and it's not supposed to be film, it's about realism, and I think that's kind of a wrong interpretation. I think the first Dogma films are really filmic in a weird way. Yeah. So it became really boring. It became people in their kitchens talking to each other about whatever, and I think there's a.
Kind of like British cinema. Yeah.
Oh, you got good stuff here. I think you got good stuff. And I think for me it always was really elitist to be the Danish cinema was really this elitist way, and there's no one can enjoy it but Danes or something, and I think I had that. I just started to enjoy films that kind of took me in, no matter where they were from, and I think it's just dangerous to get caught up in traditions of cinema. I think you should kind of break them. I mean, my films are probably, if I keep working in Denmark, they're going to be Danish either way, even if it's not by the traditional ways, but just the way of thinking or whatever. I mean, it's just compared to when I see stuff from the Middle East, I see the short films from the Middle East, there's always this little kid and his, I don't know, little bike, and that goes missing and whatever. And it kind of becomes this, I'm sorry, but it becomes this cliche of itself because it starts imitating itself. And that's Danish cinema as well, and I think that's just a dangerous thing, and I think you should just kind of do. I just think that a lot of people get caught up in doing that because that seems like the right thing to do, and they're scared of just being honest with themselves, and I think I just want to do stuff that I feel I enjoy, and I take from everywhere. French cinema. I was
struck actually when you were talking about the story of how All My Friends came about, and you said, I wanted to make a punk film, and then in the end that wasn't why you made it, but did you have in mind at that point, I want to make a punk film, and then I'm going to make a musical, and then I'm going to make something? Were you originally thinking of a sort of styles of filmmaking, and is that something that's relevant or not?
No, I wasn't thinking about that. I felt that there was some story I could tell in a punk way, and I thought that would be something that was different. I usually do stuff in environments. I really like to convey environments in my films. So I thought that environment I knew really well, and I think I thought I could convey it in a cool way or a fun way, and that was something that you at least hadn't seen before in Denmark. And then it was just the progression of then not wanting it to be a punk film after a while, and just having it be in the environment, because it's kind of a weird thing. It's like you have these, because then a lot of, what's it called? Like a lot of cliches come up as well, and you have to kind of follow them, and you don't want to, because you have, like in every film about skinheads or punks or something, there's always a scene about someone explaining why they're skinheads or something. Like that's always going to be there, and I didn't feel like doing that, and I think so I just said, okay, that's the environment we're in, but we're not gonna talk about it. It's just gonna be that, because it also was important that people kind of just could relate to the story instead of just looking at it as some punks running around. So that's how it ended up. I try to stay clear of anyone who tells me what I should or should not do, and just kind of do my own thing.
Yeah. And Daniel, do you see? I mean,
I'm more influenced by experimental films.
Yeah.
Experimental filmmakers, also from the classics in the 20s. And but on the other hand, I also did feature films. I'm more influenced by European cinema, so from also like Fassbinder and also free cinema from England. I like very much. I think it's important how you work with the actors. So you can make a film. You have scripted everything. You have a narrow timetable, and sometimes you have no time to talk and rehearse the things. Yeah, I don't like that. I like it's better to have like a week or 2 weeks and not less to rehearse with the actors, to talk about everything, and after that to shoot.
It's because, I mean, Hurdy-Gurdy is very particular. We're going to have a look at a clip in a minute. Well, the clip, actually because it's about 3 minutes long. But does it feel representative of your work? Is it is it a kind of one-off? Is there something in its approach that is inherent in what you do?
Yeah, I do experimental films. I do like feature films, like normal films.
They kind of sit, and is that deliberate to have sort of this, like Wim Wenders would do this kind of American film and his German film, or it's kind of?
I like to work experimental because you start and it brings you on different ways. You can decide which way you are going, and it was a good experience to work together. And to discuss about the things and about the philosophy and what's in the film, what's reality, what's not reality, and stuff. And also the editing was it was a hard work. Which clip we take, you can't see that it's hard work, but it was, that was a good experience to work together, 2 directors.
Well, let's have a look. I mean, it's kind of mesmeric, and I found when I saw it, there's something mesmeric and incredibly attractive about it, and then also slightly disturbing. It's got a very uncanny, odd quality. But let's have a look so people can see what we are talking about. This is Hurdy-Gurdy. Again, if I can have the lights, that's great. Thank you. Striking piece. I just wanted to talk quickly about audience. It's something we've kept coming back to today, and exploring with filmmakers and also with markers and exhibitors and other people, that sense in which when it's important to engage with an audience and it isn't, and having that debate about how for creators, there are times when you absolutely mustn't think about an audience, but there are times when you do, and I think it's interesting in different ways. You know, you're obviously very familiar with the language of advertising and commercials with the work that you've done. I mean, hurdy-gurdy is kind of, for me, beguiling, because in some ways, you know, there's a shorter version of that could look like an advert, and it's partly its duration and where it goes that takes it into a whole other sense of meaning and reflection. Do you, maybe starting with you, Daniel, was it just a pure experiment in itself? Do you have any idea of audience when you're making things?
I think if you're making films, you make it for audience, or you make it that somebody sees it. Yeah. Otherwise, you would do it. Yes, but when we make it, we also have the idea what maybe the audience get it or won't get it, or what we want to say, or whatever, or what they want to see. It's also a question. Yeah. But for me, most important is that it's not boring. I think everything's okay if it's not boring. I mean, somehow there's a kind of suspense or tense in it, and with an intention somehow, or you can find an intention in it as a viewer in the perception. It's not only the making; it's a perception too. But you're right. But we haven't thought so much like if you're making a commercial. So, and we haven't had somebody who said, "I want to sell this," and so on. So
it's interesting because obviously I haven't seen it on the big screen. I've only seen it here, and I know. You said you had the 35mm print. Yeah. Did you make it with the big screen in mind, or did you think about kind of is sort of format important to you, or was it where?
Yeah, it's a kind of one. It's more impressive the bigger it is. It's true. Yeah, we saw the monitor. We shoot it in good quality in HD, and we've had the possibility of color grading, and for the print was great. And I was so touched, so surprised when I saw the print here, because the difference between these two worlds, I would say, it's hardly to recognize in the print. There you can see the differences in colors and stuff. So it's more irritating, and that's also shall be like this. But is it real or is it not? What to think about that stuff that was a kind of intention, but we don't want to tell the audience what to think. It was not.
And how about for you, Volker? Did you have it's a short film, so to some extent that dictates where it's going to go, but is audience something that you think about? Was that just the film you wanted to make? At what point do you or don't you think about how an audience might respond to your film?
Well, I do tend to kind of think too much about the audience kind of experience. I think I've always had that. How is it being understood, and how is it kind of coming across?
I like the way you say too much.
Well, because you kind of sometimes I kind of find myself like, I mean, I'm actually working on a feature script, and it's a bit of a tricky one because it's a situation which is actually taken out of something that happened in Iceland. And it's two guys that are doing something rather obnoxious. It's something that is very hard to, I guess, sympathize with. But I think it's much like Come to Harm. I have an interest in kind of current affairs, and I tend to kind of seek out material, and that. But I am interested in understanding what happened in a situation which isn't necessarily. It isn't obvious. What we kind of think, how the hell did that come about? And how did someone find themselves in that position? How would I deal with it? And I think that just because I am interested in that, I think I have an audience, because I think we're all unique. We're all unique snowflakes and all that, but we are so alike, and we have interest in similar things, and our lives are so similar, and our problems are so similar. And just as a species, and we worry about the same things, and we fear the same things, and so I think that if I get really caught up in something, thinking, "Holy crap, this is really fascinating. How this actually happened. How did this happen? Then I think that in itself becomes almost like a compelling story, and something that I think people will engage with. but I don't sit around thinking, what's my target group or age group, or is it gonna, are women gonna relate to it, or I don't go there, but that's kind of, and by saying that I have a tendency to overthink it is that I tend to go thinking, oh crap, is this going to be inaccessible because nobody's going to want to watch this guy for an X amount of time.
So it's in the context of the content and the language that you're thinking, is this story interesting? Is this story gripping people? Are they being put off? That's
exactly.
You're like your audience in your head.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm maybe a little bit too influenced by the kind of the generic filmmaking, which the kind of does it hit the certain point and all that. You try to kind of get away from that a little bit, because I've analyzed a lot of films. I've read a lot of scripts. I'm really interested in how films work, because I think it's a completely structured event, it's a structured experience. You create something that's very intentional. How you make an audience feel, and you want to take it to a certain place. I mean, you want to dictate the experience in many ways.
And you're irritating the audience and the people. So they think with the boy is in the house, and maybe the father will shoot the boy now. That was bringing them on another way to think, and then you come with not a surprise, but then you show how it was in reality, or what happened, or the state of mind of your main actor. Also is like confused, but you're not realizing it at the beginning. That he's so confused that the reality is passing.
Well, I thought it was an interesting approach to that particular story was to actually take you on a journey with someone you don't really, he's not a very likable guy. He's kind of every encounter he has, he's actually the kind of the doer. He's always doing something a little bit wrong. He's totally off, that guy, and so it was a bit of a challenge to kind of think, okay, what's the kind of way in with this guy, and how much do we want to know about him? How much do we want to understand about what makes him tick? And for me, it was the whole film revolves around a twist, which isn't the plot twist in the film. I don't know how many in here have seen the film in its entirety, but I mean, there is an obvious big turning point, which tells you a lot about the character. And for me, it wasn't about, how clever is that kind of thing. For me, it was to turn this guy who's relatively unsympathetic and doing stuff that you can think, fuck no, get your shit together. You're kind of irritated by the guy. The guy is kind of doing something that you totally disagree with, and you're like, you want him to kind of go in another direction. But so the twist is an emotional one. You stop disliking him, and you start sympathizing with him. You start kind of thinking, oh fuck, okay, there's that was the punch that I was going for. I wanted people to kind of realize that this guy was not. You weren't supposed to object to the guy. You were supposed to feel sorry for the guy, and kind of. And I think that's kind of, you all of a sudden understand why the man is the way he is, and that comes back to what I was talking about earlier. About I kind of get off on situations that I don't fully understand. I don't understand why something happens, and I wanna understand it. I wanna learn something about it, and filmmakers. I think that's a curiosity that I think is important, because we're not more intelligent than other people, or we don't have answer to things. We don't sit here and dictate about, this is, come and see my sermon, because you guys were talking about that quite a lot this morning, about the kind of almost the religious event of going and watching a film and being sitting there and just taking it all in and being preached at. But I don't think it's about that. I think it's about more kind of making people kind of, it's a certain type of communication. You kind of, a filmmaker goes out, makes a film, tells a story, and in the process kind of asks the audience similar questions to what he's dealing with or she's dealing with in their work. Does that make sense? So that's kind of what makes me kind of, that's kind of where I go with my. I've made one short film before, which was another kind of situation where there's a man that kind of does something that's not really likable, you know, but you kind of understand what made it happen. You know, that kind of stuff interests me. Anti-heroes, I guess. If you want to put them into a category.
And putting an audience in those shoes. And how about for you? Do you have an audience in your head, or at the time of making, was that a consideration with this film? Or?
Well, yeah. I mean, of course, you want people to like it and like understand it. I think exactly. I mean, of course, this one is kind of semi-autobiographical, so it's I had to think of an audience because I've seen stuff like that before, where it doesn't work because it's like too personal, or it's it's like too inside in a way, and I think I thought of the audience just to kind of get them into it and kind of distance myself from it. But I mean, I really like unsympathetic characters. I like stuff that not everyone likes. So I think you should think of an audience just to kind of see how much you can engage them, but you can't really let them dictate the story. I mean, so I make it for an audience, and I kind of make it for myself in that sense that, well, if I like it, then that's the story I can tell. I can't really, this film is kind of a lot of people seem to like it, but there's always like one or two walkouts, and I kind of like that, you know, even though it's like, oh shit, everyone's leaving, then, because that also means that it's just, itself, it's not just like engaging everyone, it's kind of, it's also putting some people off, and maybe you're actually doing something right if you're doing that, and I don't think everyone should like it, you know, and I think it's okay that people don't like it and say, I think it's bad, and then we can talk about that, you know. But of course you want to, like, it's not fun to see a film that's not engaging at all, and as you said, you want to make it for an audience, you want to show it, or it has no value, it's like, then it's nothing. So of course.
Well, I think it's a really interesting film in that it's at once very visceral and honest, and yet it has a kind of, I mean, it's interesting to use the word detachment. I felt incredibly involved by it, but it does have a kind of balance. It's never just absolutely in one point of view. You're just able to watch this kind of car crash on some level unfolding. It's a really fascinating. Let's have a look as our last clip to the beginning of Seeing My Friends.
Kom her! Hey! Vi stopper! Kører du, mand? Nå, så kommer din ven også, hva'? Det bliver her.
Gode venner kan man ikke smide væk. Det bliver en del af dig. Som en arm eller et ben.
Læg stille!
Det er her, vi bor. Sonja har altid været der. Han var der den dag, min mor skred. Han har altid passet på mig. Han sørgede for, at jeg aldrig var alene igen. Det her er mine venner. Han er bedre end mig. Han er sjovere. Han er stærkere. Jeg var der den dag, hans far ikke vågnede op. Efter det har Sonny ændret sig. Han havde ikke andre end mig. Jeg blev hængende.
I'd like to throw it open to the audience. You've all been sitting here very patient and rapt. Do you have anything you'd like to ask or comment on, or is it just too late in the afternoon and we're all dying to go to the bar, which is the other option? Anybody?
Daniel, you're a love film. I was just wondering how what your starting point was. Did you have a kind of theoretical starting point, or was it something you set a camera and started experimenting with gathering images and then let something unfold?
Yeah, it was. Okay, we searched for some spots in Teheran, so if we can shoot from above, from a high point, and otherwise we just saw like the people that were dancing on the beach. So we saw that, and we were just running to a higher point and try to make it there. So, some things we blend, other things we have to be open and to react fast. And if you're from this high point, you can look where is there something interesting, whatever. More we choose in the wonder world, so what we took there in this miniature world. So there we decide we go there to this fireworkers things and stuff. So yeah, but it was more thing in the editing, more to bring a kind of sense of flow and of movement from this direction and from there and so.
Did any of you end up with a film that you weren't expecting? Did you make exactly what you'd had in your mind, or did it go a different way than you originally thought?
I think you never do what you think you're supposed to do.
With actors.
It always, yeah, but it always changes. It's just you're changing with the film, and the film wants something else, and you just go with it. I think I've never done anything that I set out to do in that sense. So.
No, I think, yeah, I pretty much think I managed to do what I wanted to do. It was, I mean, it changes, of course, and it progresses, and it's always evolving as you kind of work on it, but it's always, I think you're always going just closer and closer to where you want to go. So it was, I think I'm pretty close to what I wanted to do.
Have you ever made a film that you really hated? Somebody said to me earlier, it's funny, we always talk about success, and we're talking about success here, so it's a safe environment, but you know, everybody's, I know certainly me as a producer and an executive, I'm where I am today as much because of the things I did spectacularly wrong, and probably continue to do so, and hopefully learn from those mistakes as it's easy to do the achievements. I'm not necessarily asking you to name names, but have you had that experience of doing a film and it just really didn't work, and you think that's actually been a hugely important experience for you, or am I alone in failure being one of my founding principles?
Well, I come out of a commercial environment, so a lot of the dumb stuff I've done has been a disaster. So, but
you're used to it.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I've done music videos that I've been really disappointed with, and it has had to do with it almost always had to do with I had too big an idea for the budget or or an idea that actually didn't fit the band, for instance. It's almost like, you know, having a film idea for a film and kind of going out blindly and casting it and kind of needing a Rambo and ending up with a 5-year-old little, you know, kid, or you know, it's like literally, it's like, holy crap, that would have been great for Radiohead, but not for that German pop star, or you know, or.
And the rest of you, any kind of black moments in the past that have?
Yeah, during my studies, some films are really. I won't watch them again.
Is anyone else allowed to, or you direct?
No, the thing is, I was more disappointed, and not so the audience, but I see it more often. And you see, I could have done differently, and I hate this part, and yeah. So it was also with the editor. He said, "Now, Daniel, we stop now. The film is finished. You can't change it anymore." So I think it's a good way to have an editor. Yeah.
So who was it that said, film is never finished, it's merely abandoned? That was like it's a paraphrasing something else, though, I think.
All films are orphan children.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
someone has to tell a filmmaker to stop.
That's true. Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah. You learn from mistake, from failure, I think. Yeah. I won't do this again now.
I think you learn more from doing bad stuff than good stuff, I think. And you do a lot more bad stuff to begin with, at least, I think. But the movie I did before this one was a pretty big turning point for me, because I'd kind of done it and started out being really happy about it, and then just when I saw it, like at the premiere, I got very depressed, because I just realized I would never go to see it. Like, it wasn't my film anymore, and like people seem to like it a lot, but it was just, and I think you can do that, like end up doing stuff that you, like, why am I doing, what was this about, you know? And or that you fail to communicate what it is you want to tell and what's important, and that stuff can happen. But I think it's better to get that waking up than just doing successful stuff all the time, and it keeps you kind of humble too, I think.
Yeah. I think famously Woody Allen says that his film that he hates the most is Manhattan, and it's like an all-time classic.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes filmmakers are their own worst critics in a way.
Well, I think you associate all sorts of stuff with a scene or a film or whatever, some piece of work that you've done with something that you alone are kind of savvy to, you know, no one else actually knows what took place or how it kind of came about, and you know, it's like I read an interview with Akira Kurosawa when he was talking about Ran or one of his big films, and he was saying, you know, with that frame, I can't watch that frame. It's like a famous shot in his films. I can't watch that because all I see is the power plant that's on the left side of the frame and the highway that's on the right side of the frame. And it's like, but you're in 16th century Japan if you don't know anything about it, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's.
You know, as a filmmaker, you know what you've missed as well, stuff you really wanted to do that was never there in the end. Or,
yeah.
You know, sometimes it's another thing, but.
Exactly.
So we're in
and it's the same. It's for the same reason you hang on to stuff that no one else actually likes but you.
Yes. Yes. So it's a profession of perpetual dissatisfaction. As a closing thought, what's next for each of you in this dissatisfied world that we live in? What are your projects that you're working on or hoping to be working on next?
Me? I'm doing, hopefully I'm working on a short and a feature, but just writing them. And the short is actually like a kid's movie, but it's a very violent one. It's about like this self-destructive kid who starts to put himself through accidents to hurt himself. And I'm doing this feature film about these men who are unsatisfied with their lives, and they start leading a double life at night in the weekends, where they're like vigilantes in the Copenhagen nightlife.
Sounds exciting.
Let's see. Let's see what it ends up being.
And is that being developed? Do you have sort of support to develop that, or it's just something you're?
Yeah. I mean, I'm developing it with the Film Institute, and they want the Danish Film Institute, but they want me to do a short film for them first. And it's like this. It's just because the Danish system is like that. You can't really do a feature film unless you do a short film. So I have to do the short first and then the feature. And I think it's just going to be those two, hopefully. But I'm working with them, not against them.
Great. Daniel, what's next for you?
Next I'm making like a mini-sode, like 5 short films. And I would shoot the pilot in February. So it's the stories are based on columns in a newspaper, in Die Zeit. And so it's a special figure. It's Harold Martenstein, and he has a special view on things, and he describes it in little stories. And so I transferred now one story into a script, and now we are casting. But okay, so the crew is. I have already a crew as a cameraman. It's the most important thing. Yeah. Looking forward, it's a kind of another thing. Yeah, more strict, more. But there will be some dreams in it. So I want to design it more surrealistic way. No.
And is that financed, or is that something that
it's partly financed? Yes.
From
still, but they want to see at first. They want to see the pilot. So that is
from a film fund or television, or what's
television. I'm negotiations, but.
Yes, we know all that.
Yeah, but hopefully, but I mean, for this one we are planned. It's about 12 minutes, the first episode, and we have now together like 30,000 to shoot, and must be enough. I shot with less.
Yes. Great. And Borka, what's yours?
I'm working on a feature script. It's kind of set in a similar environment as the short, and structured in a not dissimilar way. And it's a thriller, but it's a totally different story. Something that's kind of taken out of Icelandic the Icelandic court system.
And is that? Do you have backing to do that, or
no?
are you
No, I'm just
developing and then you go?
Yeah, I'm working on the script still. So I kind of should start looking around now. It's kind of the next step, really.
So busy years ahead. Thank you very much for sharing insights. Thank you very much for listening. Thanks very much, John.
Thank you for having us.